Stop the cap.
All right. This might be a good one. And I did touch on this topic before. I actually tried to read some like articles, research paper, but I will just butcher, the Scandinavian languages, like Milnor, Mijor, or whatever, however they say it when they talk about, Thor's hammer. But whoever wants to take this video and then like edit it and put like, you know, the appropriate images and shit in it, you can do that. I don't care. Because it probably would be more effective. Because there's a lot to talk about here. But I don't want to get too off topic. I'm gonna try to stay focused. But this is in response to somebody who saw the post that I made on the community tab about how I like taking a dig at these white supremacists that they come at black people with the "we was Kangs," and I'm like, yeah, and you all, we was Vikangs. I didn't come up with that myself. There was actually somebody in my comment section that wrote that, and like we were going back and forth, and then they said it, and then it was like, yo, that's hilarious, and then I just been taking that shit and just running with it because it was the funniest. It was the funniest shit ever. Like, because we were, they always, whether it's, he didn't do nothing. What's the other phrase that they say? The usual suspects. We was Kangs. There's white men have all these like, racist catchphrase memes that they like to throw in all these random comment sections. Although I do think a lot of the comments that you see in a lot of these videos, especially like news videos where there's like incidents of crime or robbery, because I've seen him get it wrong. Like I've seen like the criminals be white and it'll be like usual suspects, or the criminal be Asian, usual suspect. I'm like, yo, so this looks like some Russian bot shit. Like it's not really actually any white man on the other end, other than like Russians trying to stoke, you know, freaking, since America has free speech, it's very easy for these other countries that America has beef, with, to come in the comment sections and then basically stoke the racial conflicts that we have, and try to kick off a civil war, which I think they're doing a pretty successful job of doing. But that doesn't mean that we haven't always had these problems in America as it pertains to race, reparations, Jim Crow, and the legacy of all that shit. Okay, but my thoughts on the whole Viking thing. So anyway, posted that image of the Viking huts, on my community tab, with the other images of essentially pre-colonial Africa, pre-colonial West Africa, and everything, and all the stereotypes of, oh, black people, they lived in these primitive, basic mud huts. And again, I've shown the images because I've seen the documents and the descriptions of what Europeans saw when they went to West Africa. They were talking about there were massive, massive cities. I mean, you really got to think about, like, where are, when you think about the Americas and bringing African slaves to the Americas, they brought millions of people. Like, more black slaves went to Brazil than went to, the Caribbean and North America combined. I'm pretty sure combined. You're talking millions of, tens of millions of people. So how do you just go to one coast of a continent and just pluck out tens of millions of people? So there had to be massive cities there. Okay, but cities made out of clay and wood and mud brick. Like obviously that's not going to last. That's not going to last. Even 50 years after the fact. I mean, we've seen the images. I've shown the images on the community tab of the siege of Benin, and them taking the bronze. What is it? The bronze? No, they're not bronze statues, but they're bronze. Oh, what would you call them? I forget what you would call them, but like with the mask and the little people, and they're up there. That's basically their recorded history whenever some major events happen. At least that's what I was told. So all that was destroyed and taken, and white supremacy has been able to just basically fabricate whatever it wants about West Africa, oh, they have no history, they don't know anything, right? Despite all of the ancient maps that if you go over on Bright Insight, he talks about the rivers that cut through the Sahara and ancient maps. Like, we don't know how long or how far back, all of that stuff goes. I always say, black people are the ancient ones. We are the ancient people. We are the first people. And so, you're talking, 300,000 years minimally, and white people didn't show up until about 45 to 55,000 years ago. Blue eyes didn't even come on the radar until about 6 to 10,000 years ago. Woolly mammoth were still walking around, what was it? What I think 4,000 years ago, they were still walking around, so in any event, it's funny because, with the post that I had, it's like you'll get the white supremacists, they'll come through. We've already proven that ancient Egypt was a black African civilization. It was rooted in a black African civilization. Other groups came in, the Hyksos, the Persians, the Syrians, the Mamluks, the Ottomans, the Greeks, the Romans, right? We've already showcased that. The statues, the images, all the stuff that I've been posting over the last, month or two. And, you'll get the white supremacists, they'll come through and they'll say, you're West African. How can you claim, basically Nile Valley civilization, right? And it was funny is you get the white supremacists, they come through and they want to claim, Scandinavia and Norse mythology and being, Northern European, right? But then when it comes to there are no magnificent structures in Northern Europe. Right. But when it comes to trying to have this pissing match between, claiming that ancient Egypt was a, black African civilization, and we all know the magnificent structures and monuments that are in ancient Egypt, then they come and they run to Greece and then they run to Rome, the same, darker Italians and Greeks that white people didn't want to claim until like the 1920s and shit. In America, I mean, the laws and the discrimination that the Italians faced obviously wasn't as bad as what the Native Americans and African Americans faced. But I'm saying it was pretty bad. The execution of Sacco and Vanzetti, I talked about that before. It was pretty bad. Many of the gun laws had to do with not black people, but Italians in cities like New York. You know what I mean? There ain't even that many black people to go around. They had the Italian immigrants and, the shit that they would say about Italian immigrants. I mean, pretty much all of the white people, that came into America that were not considered white, until, later on. And I've already talked about this. The whole concept of whiteness did not appear until the 1500s because Europe was kings, queens, nobles, and peasants and the serfs. And they had to figure out a way to give the serfs some sort of identity of racial superiority to get them to go and facilitate all of the rape and pillaging out there in the rest of the world. Once they discovered, the rest of the world existed, and then there were riches to be taken and stolen and brought back to Europe. And so the white elites, that created that, like when you look at today, like white supremacy is a plague unto the planet. But yet the white serfs, the white proletariat, they have embraced it and they have adopted it, to such a degree that they're running around and crying about white genocide and the great replacement and all this stuff, right? Because as I've said before, the white capitalist, they only care about capitalism and maintaining their position in power. They don't care about the idea of white genetic annihilation. They want cheap labor, bring the immigrants in, right? Which again, the immigrants are only coming because invade the world, invite the world, as Tim Dillon said on the Joe Rogan show, right? You go out in the rest of the world, you prevent them from naturalizing their resources and benefiting their own people and their own society. You cause conflicts and wars, you destabilize their region, and then you turn around and you're bitching about why, there's some Muslims or Africans, in your backyard, right? And again, the white people's, lust for cheap labor, is a complete contradiction to this, supposed, pure white nation that they claim that they want to live in. because truth be told, none of them are trying to do any of the jobs that they would have immigrants to do, right? But I'm saying all this, to say, so it is funny to me when, you'll get these white supremacists, they run around, we was Vikings and shit. Then when you're doing this pissing match between, whose civilization, came up with what, then all of a sudden they want to run from Norway and Sweden and Finland, and then they want to run all the way down to Greece and Italy, and then try to claim Greece and Italy and bring that into the white sphere, right? Even though it's nonsensical because of the fact that we already know that the Romans and the Greeks got their knowledge from the black Egyptians. How do we know that? Because they said that they did. Right. So it's like they can't, like, the white supremacy has created such a myth about whiteness, that even when they try to rewrite history, like they can't do it. And this is where a lot of the frustration comes in. So I've talked about before how, and I've noticed this, and some other people have talked about this. There's other videos talking about, why white supremacists go towards the Viking shit. I was first kicked off to this or recognized this when I was watching a video of whatever that blonde white woman's name is that does Red Ice. Red Ice, I think, got kicked off of YouTube. Same with, I think, Jared Taylor got kicked off of YouTube. But Red Ice, I remember she was doing a video and she brought up the whole thing about how, Christianity was a problem because, and she literally said it. She said Christianity was a problem because it's too Jewish. And that was the first time I ever heard like anything, because I feel like white people hijack everything. Like, white supremacists have hijacked the American flag. I don't see the American flag the same way I saw the American flag when I was like, a young African American, kid, back in like the 80s and 90s. I don't see it the same way. Like, back then, the American flag was like G.I. Joe and the freaking Top Gun and the F-15 fighter jet with the screeching eagle that sounds like a, red-tailed a hawk, right? All that shit. Like, that's what it was, right? America, fuck yeah, right? Like, that's what it was growing up. And then after Charlottesville, after Obama got elected, it was like the American flag started to look more like the Confederate flag. You start seeing, and then they started like mixing it, and you see this with the white nationalist flag, where it's like a combination of a room and the American flag, and then like you just start seeing like all these other flags. Like, it's like, just pick a flag, right? But you got like the thin blue line, I see the thin blue line flag, I think white supremacy. If I see a white guy, at the gym that's got a big, like, colorful red, white, and blue American flag with the stars on it on his arm, I think white supremacy. I think they're white supremacists because they've hijacked, that symbol, which is the American flag, the whole MAGA, Trump, America. And what they really mean is they mean white America. Like, that's what it's become. It's no longer, the American flag. And obviously black people have always had like a mixed relationship with America and how we've been treated. Like, Chris Rock made the joke about how America has been like that stepdad that, takes care of you, but then every once in a while comes in your bedroom in the middle of the night and rapes you and fucks you in the ass. You know what I mean? That's what America has been to African Americans. So there's this funny relationship that African Americans have with America, where in one sense it's home, in another sense it's that abusive, molesting step parent, right? So what was I going to say about the American flag, the symbols, the hijacking? Oh yeah. So, when it comes to the Norse mythology, and it comes to the Vikings and all that, white supremacists have definitely, hijacked that and taken that over. Like, if I see a white guy with the Milner tattoo or the Milner, what do you call that shit? The Thor's hammer necklace. You know what I mean? Like, I try not to sit there and say, because growing up, I thought Viking shit was some cool shit too. I never really understood the history of it. I was like, yeah, those are the guys. And even though I heard that they don't have horns and shit like that, but I was like, Leif Erikson, and they were the guys that went and, went to like the northern part of England and like raped and pillaged, or went to the Netherlands and raped and pillaged and, grabbed the booty, right? I just picture a bunch of guys hopping off a ship, like the beginning of like Braveheart or something, like torching some straw huts with the thatched roofs and shit, burning that shit down. A bunch of women screaming, trying to get to their children. And these guys are like on horseback, and they're just like like they always got to do a right before they grab the bitch. You know what I mean? And then they grab these chests of gold. I don't know who's just sitting around with chests of gold, and they bring it back to the ship. You know what I mean? And then they do Viking songs, by a campfire, talking about all the loot that they stole. Like that was the image. That was the image that I had in my head growing up. And when it comes to the whole, how the white supremacists have hijacked that, again, going back to Red Ice, she's the only one that I heard that actually explicitly stated that Christianity is too Jewish, for her, or for the white supremacists that she speaks for, which makes sense because, again, I'm not European, right? My ancestors are from Africa. I don't know what beef that Europeans had with Jewish people. From the research that I have discovered, the historical reason or justification as to why other Europeans took issue with Jewish people is because, number one, because of Judas and the whole claim that he snitched on Jesus and got Jesus killed, right? That the Jews killed Jesus, right? That's the first part. And then the second part is the usury, which is the fact that Jewish people were charging interest, and they held a lot of Europeans' debt. This was the whole reason that King Philip got rid of the Knights Templar, because they went to the Middle East and during the Crusades, and they were banking. They got involved in banking, so that people didn't have, because the whole banking really started with, you could make, claim something. Like you'd have, like, instead of walking around with all your gold, you could go and deposit it in one location and then reclaim it in another location. That way, during your travels, you wouldn't get robbed of your booty, right? Because like there were no highways, there was no, infrastructure. Like you were out there with nothing but your ass, you and your caravan, trying to get from one location to the other. And there were plenty of people that knew the trade routes, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna, it's like that scene in Book of Eli when the woman was like, help, help, and she was acting like, and then all of a sudden the other two guys, came out, you know what I mean? And they were like, basically, give me all your stuff. Like, it's literally like that. You're just a traveling person, and then all of a sudden these people jump out, right? And the funny thing is, in the black people have kind of adopted and taken over the term thug, or at least, that's what white people call us. Thug actually comes from the word thuggy, which is an Indian word. It's a Hindu word that describes basically bandits that are going and robbing people as they travel, right? So obviously, way before modern times, this was a problem, throughout the ancient world. You're trying to go from one location to the next, and then there would be some bandits. They knew the trade routes, and they would try to rob you. So just giving you a little bit of backstory on that. So where was I? Oh yeah, the banking system. So usury, is basically lending people money and then charging interest. And so Jewish people became very successful at that. And as a result, a lot of people didn't like them, because anytime, you're the group that holds a lot of people's debt, debts that they can't pay back. Yeah, a lot of people are going to have a problem with you, and they're probably going to be like, why don't we just get rid of them, and then we don't have to pay them back? Plain and simple. So, that's what the history is with that. But, the what was I saying? So the first part has to do with the crucifixion of Jesus, and then the second part has to do with banking and the whole system of usury. And so that's why they have a problem, with Jewish people. But the other aspect is obviously, the Third Reich. We know that the man with the funny mustache decided that, he wanted to get rid of a, certain segment of the population. We all know the history on that, World War II, why that happened, all that good stuff. And, that trend has continued of, basically blaming Jewish people for essentially, all the woes of the world. Now, the interesting thing from my perspective is that I'm like, yeah, but the Germans tried it. Like, they tried it. They tried to eradicate them. So in today's modern context, when the white nationalists or the white supremacists say that the little hats are trying to do something to destroy them, I'm like, well, y'all were fucking with them for centuries. So, if they are trying to destroy you, it kind of makes sense, right? It didn't come out of nowhere, right? If they are trying to undermine you and try to destroy you, right? And the irony is like, I look at the same thing when I look at the whole Israel, Gaza, Palestinian conflict, where again, I know the history, right? Haganah, Irgun, Lehi, right? All these organizations, the 750 British soldiers that were killed to get the British the fuck out of there, right? The Nekba, right? All these sorts of things. And I'm like, when Netanyahu gets up there and he tries to act like, we don't understand why they just attacked us on October 7th. I'm like, really? You don't understand? You don't understand why they attacked you? You don't understand like where it came from? It's kind of funny because like I look at the white supremacists like you don't. Let's just go with the idea that you believe all the conspiracy theories that the little hats are out to get you and everything. Why wouldn't they be out to get you when you tried to eradicate them? Like why wouldn't they? Right? Like makes sense, right? Just saying. A little side note. It's just funny watching these this white on white violence, right? That ain't got nothing to do with us. It's funny just watching the shit. But anyway. Getting back to the whole thing with the Vikings, what I see is this, and I'm gonna tie it back to the African American experience. What I see is a battle between modernity and the white men's pursuit of white male masculinity, which can't be any more exemplified than in the Viking. The Vikings, the image of the Viking, when you say a Viking, you picture basically a hyper masculine white man with muscles, right? They're all cut up with muscles, and he's filled with testosterone, and he's got a beard, and he's just the epitome of white male masculinity. Now, what I find funny is like even before that, I remember when the movie 300 came out, everybody wanted to be a Spartan, right? Everybody got I remember guys were getting the Sig Sauer 1911 that had the come and take, on the handle with the Spartan helmet on it, right? So everybody wanted to be a Spartan back when 300 came out, like in the early to mid 2000s, something like that, right? And then it shifted to, I'm trying to think was there anything in between? I'm trying to think if there's anything in between. I would argue it shifted to like the zombie apocalypse shit, where everything was all about zombies. They were coming out with like green shotguns from Remington and shit like that. Like all type of, everything was zombie shit. And to me, the zombie shit, I remember when somebody made a point about the Second Amendment. This is back like probably when Obama was trying to pass the assault weapons ban. And there was a brother who was making a point on a live, and he was saying, he was like, nah, he's like, what you got to understand is all this shit with the zombies and white people, they always fantasizing about the world collapsing in zombies. Nigga, we the zombies. We're the zombies in those scenarios. In other words, the zombie movies cater to this bloodlust that white people have for wanting to purge other human beings. That's where a lot of that shit comes from. It's like, even when it comes to, horror movies, like, black people don't get into horror movies. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get into that shit. Black people's lives are hard enough. Black people struggle with real dangers, throughout our history, whether it was the Ku Klux Klan or whether it was racist police and shit like that. Like, we don't need to be scared by making some shit up. Like that's really what it means to be white. Like, when you gotta make up some fantasy shit to hunt you down or to kill you coming out the shadows or some shit, that is exclusively a white privilege. Because the biggest monsters to to black people, are white people. The biggest monsters to white people are shit that white people literally have to make up. Xenomorphs, the Jeepers Creepers. They gotta come up with all type of shit to kill them, to bring them excitement, Jigsaw and movies like Saw and all that shit, Jason, all that stuff. Like, black people we don't come up with that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Black people, it's funny because people make all these jokes about how black people don't fuck with that shit, right? All that shit, right? Black people we don't fuck with that. You know what I mean? I went and I asked AI, like, what is the reason why ghosts don't fuck with black people? And AI just basically was like, black people got better shit to worry about than, intangible, mystical, supernatural shit. Like, black people face real dangers every day. I was like, good answer, AI. Good answer. And that rolls into what I think a lot of white men's problem is, which is this whole, what modernity does to masculinity. Right? And I feel like there's a huge jealousy of black men as a result, going back to the white guy that I know that said, black men cheat the system. And I was like, what do you mean black men cheat the system? And he said he felt that black men cheat the system because black men will go out here, big dicks and swag, and just be them. And they'll have all these women throwing themselves at them, trying to fuck them. We're not talking about marriage. We're not talking about long-term relationships. Just fuck them. And a lot of white men, they just want to fuck. They don't want to wine and dine. They don't want to court. They don't want to this. But white men and white supremacy have built this society based on the idea of, white males being able to provide stability. Right? That's what the 1950s, the winning the World War II, and the jobs with the unions, full medical and dental health care, not being redlined, being able to move into Levittowns. That's what that created, what the boomer generation got to enjoy. Okay. And when you take that away, this is why white men currently feel so threatened. When you take away the stability, what is the white male identity? If white men can no longer provide, if that's what they have defined themselves with, what else do they have? Black men got a whole subculture that was created due to prolonged exposure to poverty, whether it's hip hop, street culture, just the way that, things go down in the black community, right? Which keeps black men on their toes, right? White supremacy comes through, deprives the black community of access to capital and resources. And black men, and black women are basically just in survival mode. Right? Black men, I remember that when they mentioned this in American History X, how black men are, they're shooting each other, and they're at war with each other all the time. Black on black violence. I'm like, yeah, black men are on their toes, as a result of the violence in their community due to everybody being in survival mode and every man out there, for himself, which is the sad part of us not having unity. But at the same time, it still keeps black men on their toes. You see this anytime you have these stupid clips where these white boys try to go into the hood and they try to prank young black men, and it almost invariably goes down bad. Right? They either get swung on. I remember that they had that video, the popular video where the guy jumped out the trash can and tried to scare the black dude, and he literally turned around and hit him with a right hook. And the dude fell back in the trash can. Like, no, black men are always on their toes because of the hostile environment and the situation that white supremacy, has created. Right? I remember I had a couple white guys I was trying to, they were young guys. They see me at the gym, they see me lifting all this heavy weight and everything, and they'd be like, man, how do you do that? Da 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 da. And I was trying to teach them how to bench press and have proper form and whatnot. And it got to a point where I was just like, dude, don't you have anything that you're like mad about? You know what I mean? Because like the way he was benching, like it was like he was just pushing with his arms. Like there was no like anger like behind the push. There was no, you know what I mean? Like when you see like Ronnie Coleman and he's getting ready for a set, and he's like, lightweight, you know what I mean? Like, and he's just real hype, and he's getting himself charged. These young white guys didn't have that. And I'm just sitting there, and it hit me because I was like, what the fuck do they have to be mad about? They in the burbs and whatnot, right? Like, what the fuck do they have to be mad about, right? Taken care of, provided for, and whatnot. Even as a black man who grew up in the burbs, there's a lot of shit I'm mad about. I'm mad about white supremacy. I'm mad about, racist remarks. I'm mad about being marginalized. I'm mad about the type of microaggressions you deal with in the workplace. I'm mad about the way that America has marginalized, black men. And then we got to hear all this nagging and bitching coming from our own women. There's plenty of shit as a black man to be pissed off about. You just walking around, angry. And it's in part one of the reasons I'm saying black women, they go through the same thing. They have their own things that they're upset about and frustrated about and whatnot. So you got two angry people, trying to have a relationship with each other. You know what I mean? It's fucked up. But that's what we deal with. You know what I mean? And again, that keeps you on your toes, right? But when you got the only white guys that I see that aren't soft like that are basically white guys who pretty much go through the same thing that a lot of African Americans go through, right? Broken households, the resources aren't there, they're poor, poor white people, and they struggle. You know what I mean? And they got to find other ways to entertain themselves. They can't fit into the rest of white society. They just can't fit into it. They don't have the right vernacular. They don't have the right clothes. They need to get their teeth fixed. I mean, just a whole bunch of shit. Those are really the only ones that I see that actually have that anger. And quiet as is kept, when you can get, when those poor white guys, you know what I mean? Those white guys that come from struggle, when they're not on the racist shit, those are the white guys that black people will tend to get along with better. You know what I mean? So, as it pertains to the whole thing with the modernity, I feel like the Viking thing is white men's attempt to reach back, or the idea that oh, this is the past, to not only an era and a space where all the problems of modern society aren't there, right? And like all the stuff with feminism, and I mean they just tacked on a whole bunch of shit. Like feminism was bad enough, and then they tacked on LGBTQ, and then you throw in what people want to deem woke culture, which again was another thing that was hijacked. When it came to the problems that black people specifically had, that black people were trying to get addressed, right? But to young white men, it just looks like a bombardment of them catching hell. And you have this modernity, where modern society says, you're supposed to be this white man that wears a gray flannel suit and you go to work every day and you work in a cubicle. I mean, that was the whole essence of the movie Fight Club. Fight Club, and not just Fight Club. Fight Club is one movie. The movie Nobody, where the guy was like ex-CIA or something, and then he was like fighting people on the bus, but he looked like this mild-mannered dude. I think the name of the movie was Nobody, right? Nobody, and then what's another movie that touches on the damn, I'm going blank. I just had it. Hold on. Oh, and this new Joker movie. They're coming out with another one. You know what I mean? Like that, like the Joker does not appeal to me as a black man at all. I'm like, you sit there and you watch it and it's like, you got this white guy and you're losing your mind. Okay, you went through some shit and everything. Nigga, suck it up. You know what I mean? It's fucking acting, being the Joker. No, see, the Joker speaks to the chaos that white men want to engage in. But the weird thing is like the irony is that white men can't, like, their whole identity is baked into maintaining order and maintaining stability. And there's a jealousy, an additional jealousy that exists when they look at black men, for example, where we look like we're free. Like with the, a black man wearing his hairstyle the way that he wants to wear his hairstyle. You know what I mean? Or a black man, just the way a black man carries himself, who's not operating in corporate America, who's in the streets or whatever, right? This is the appeal that the women have towards these men because they operate by a beat of their own drum. See, when you're so excluded from white dominant society, right, and white dominant society doesn't allow you to participate, right? You end up with a subculture that grows out of that, and pretty much that's where black men are. Where even though it's a structure that is operated, owned, and controlled and dominated by white men, there's an aspect of it where if you're not an elite white man, even being an average white man, you're a bitch because you're a sucker to the system. This is where all the voices of the manosphere and Andrew Tate and all that other stuff come into play, where they talk about you're just a normie and you're you're working for you're in the matrix and all this sort of stuff, like, which is very, like, this goes to show you just how much the white elites, and some people say there's the plot and the plan, and it's the rise and fall of empires and everything else like that. Still, I expect the white elites to be a little bit smarter than that, because they don't seem to get it. They seem to be tone deaf. There doesn't really seem to be a plot or a plan or exit strategy. It's just, I'm just like, okay, so you're just going to let the shit crash out, or you assume it's not going to crash out. And then you got the other white people thinking that they're going to save civilization with more white Jesus and Christianity. Like, that's what the older conservatives are on. You know what I mean? But the young guys, they're not really on that. They're trying to figure out how to be the next Andrew Tate, which ironically, is this biracial man that they're running around following. Right. But when those rewards, that allow white men to have that classic 1950s, provider identity, when that's no longer there, white men are like scrambling the jets. Okay. And then you go and then you see like black men, you know what I mean? You got like if you watch a rap video, like Ellie Frost, Shatas, right? Or if you watch, Chef G, Love Me Now, and you listen to the music, right? And you listen to the energy, right? And you listen to the deep ass voices, and they in the streets and they killing people, and the black people killing each other is all on the news and everything. There's this sense of hyper masculinity that white men want to tap into, but essentially they can't. Now, there's our white men that, like, they're still trying to maintain order. And their whole idea of, like, they're on some, please, just let us purge, right? And this is where you get into the law and order white guys. There's a lot of white guys that join police and police departments, and they want to become police officers just so that they can crack black men over the head. One, because they're jealous of black men. They feel sexually inferior and insecure to black men. And so, just let me go out there and take out a black guy, and that'll really, reaffirm, my white male masculinity. And you'll see this, like, even with this woman that recently got, that got killed with the pot of water, Macy, I think was her name. If you notice, one of the cops, although he was the cop that was actually like, let me go get my med kit, and the other cop that actually shot her in the face was the one that stopped him, right? But if you looked at his arm from his body camera, he had what looked to be some sort of like sun knot or like Viking rune circle symbol. I couldn't really make it out because of how blurry the image was that I did see. But you see a lot of that. You see a lot of the Viking symbology of them trying to find a, like, almost like a counterpart to black male hypermasculinity. And so white male hypermasculinity is, black male hypermasculinity is to be a thug and to be in the streets and selling drugs and killing each other and you a gangbanger, right? Then the white male masculinity is to be a cop and a Viking, or preferably a Viking cop, right? And so that's how like the white supremacy works, where they get they want to maintain the position of authority, but they also want to move in the direction of hyper white male masculinity, which the only image of that is, again, you can go to the Spartans, right? But I think the Spartans kind of got ruined because, truth be told, the Spartans were very homosexual. If y'all don't know that, the Spartans had some what it was, they had some gay ass saying. It was like, that was like, boys are for men, or some gay ass shit that they had. You can go and you can look it up. They had a lot of raging homosexuality, and the idea was that think about it. If you got a bunch of soldiers, who's going to fight harder for each other? A bunch of soldiers that got women back at home, or a bunch of soldiers, male soldiers, that are actually gay lovers? So you're fighting next to your lover on the battlefield. And that's one of the things that, a lot of white males, they tried to run away from that shit. And then they tried to bury it. Then they tried to run away from it. Then they just abandoned it altogether. They were like, oh, too much gay shit over here. So then, they went to, the whole Viking situation. And that's where we are now, with them hijacking the Vikings. To me, all of it is very interesting. Like, I see it. I think that, and this is why I keep telling black people out here, I'm like, get your power tools and whatnot, because there's an aspect of white males that I think is extremely dangerous to black people, where it's like they want black people to be cannon fodder, so that they can purge, so that they can get their bloodlust out. There's an aspect of bloodlust that I feel that a lot of white people, especially white men in particular, that they carry, with them, and they're looking for ways to, justify it, right? They're looking for, to get out that energy, that masculine energy, that savage energy, which, again, in a modern society, which again is supposed to be tied to, them providing stability in mass. Your average white man being able to provide a stability that black men are not able to provide. And that, therefore, keeps them a leg up above black men, right? But again, when the global elites, the white elites, basically decide, well, we're not going to do that anymore, what does that leave white men with? And then now so they contrast themselves. I don't know how it goes on in Europe. I can only speak on how it goes on in America. I know they got like Somalis in Europe, and they're talking about grooming gangs and everything, right? That's how the language goes, because you use the language to basically, alienate and then isolate people so that you can openly attack them without any sort of, reprisal, or so that you can get the support from the greater society. But in America, I'm saying there's a lot of hypermasculinity when it comes to black men. Black men are criminalized, are seen as a threat. The whole thing with the Mike Brown, and we're seen as, bigger and stronger than they are. Like, we're the Incredible Hulk, freaking that cop. What was that cop's name? Dylan. What was the cop's name? I can't Darius. What was his name? Can't think of what the cop's name started with a D. But anyway, how he was like, oh, and his grip was so strong. It was so strong. You know what I mean? Like, I was just in fear of my life. Like, just all this weak bitch ass shit. And they've been doing that to black men since a birth of a nation. You know what I mean? Just the whole, they're a bunch of savages, and the white woman, she got to throw herself off of a cliff to get away from the savage Negro and whatnot. And then like, the weird thing is you got freaking the whole thing that Gail Dines talked about, King Kong and the white woman, and the fucking what the hell is it? The whole like, even today, like with the blacked.com. Like black doc. Who's watching all this interracial porn? You got the cuckold shit. There's a lot of fucking white male homoeroticism that surrounds black men. It's very strange. It's very weird, right? Where we're the threat, we're the enemy, we're the orcs in freaking World of Warcraft, and white people are just the white people, right? And we're recognized as these hyper masculine, big dumb brutes, right? That's how they want to characterize us, literally as the orcs in World of Warcraft, right? But then, there's all this homoerotic, type of shit. Because again, there like black people are not a big enough audience in order for interracial porn to be as economically viable as it is. Same thing with hip hop. The biggest consumers of hip hop are white people. It's not black people. Ain't enough black people consuming hip hop, to make it as lucrative as it is. So there's a very strange relationship with black people, especially in particular black men, that I'm trying to put my finger on it, and I can't put my finger on it. Maybe some of you can help me out in the comment section. I can't put my finger on it. But it's there, and you can feel it, and it's in the air, and you can smell it. You know what I mean? It's like when you walk outside on a hot, humid day, and you can like feel the air, because there's so much moisture in the air, and that's what it's like, when it comes to the sort of animosity towards black men, with like a smidgen of like adoration, right? Especially when it comes to black men's physiques. There's a brother, he's like Brazilian or something like shit, Fazio or some shit like, I don't know what his name is. This dude looks like an anime character. He looks like an anime character. This motherfucker, everywhere he goes, it just looks like he walks in the room, and then it's just all you hear is Bankai. That's like that's just what he looks like. Some of y'all know who I'm talking about. His delts, his fucking trap. Everything is just. This dude looks like he's like 1% body fat. It's that type of shit. And when you get into the bodybuilding discussions and the bodybuilding pages, they all acknowledge, the quote unquote genetic superiority of black men in that regard. That's what I'm saying. Is there's a resentment and there's an adoration at the same time. It's very funky. It's very, very, very strange. But I feel like white men are trying to tap into their own version of that, which means that they're going to have to get away from, they still got the white supremacy element. They got to get away from the Judeo-Christianity. They're trying to flee away from that. And then they're trying to get into, this sort of hyper masculine Conan the Barbarian, white dude. The strange thing is a lot of them don't even work out like that. You'll see these white guys, they'll have like flabby arms. They got a bunch of rune tattoos, and then they'll get like the Viking haircut. They'll shave their temples off. You know what I mean? They'll braid their hair. You know what I mean? They got the Milner tattoo and shit like that. But like, dude looks sloppy. Like you look like a fucking, I don't know, like a sloppy biker or some shit like that. You know what I mean? They're not really looking like, who's the guy? What's the guy's name? Is it Tom Ford? What is the guy's name? The guy who's that fucking white dude? He was going to fight the Iranian guy that was like he was like a doughboy. Like he had like fat muscle. It was weird. And then when they met each other, he didn't want no smoke. The Iranian dude, the Persian dude, he wanted no smoke. I think they call him the Iranian Hulk. The guy's name is something Ford. I forget his whole name. But like, that's a scary looking white dude. You know what I mean? The dude that was in, Troy, with the whole, is there no one else? That motherfucker. Okay? That's a white dude that might have a couple black dudes shaking in their booties. You know what I'm saying? But, when it comes to, your average run of the mill white dude, nah. Or like, what was that movie where the white guy, he got framed and then went to prison, and then he became like he became like the head white supremacist in the prison. Damn, I can't think of what that movie. I'm going blank. Y'all know what movie I'm talking about, right? You know what I mean? By the end of that movie, like he was looking like, yeah, that's the white dude that you don't want to fuck with. You know what I mean? But a lot of these other white dudes, like even like when you see the white dudes, like the thing is like their testosterone develops before they develop their bodies. So usually what you'll see is they got the white boy rage, the I want to shoot up the place type of rage, but their body is built weak because they don't want to put in the effort, which only further highlights the weakness and the pussified, sissified, wussified energy that they got. You know what I'm saying? Like because they want to have a certain image, but they don't want to put in the work. They don't want to put in the work. Meanwhile, they're jealous of black men that have the image, but the black men are over there, in the park, doing muscle ups and pull ups and chin ups and push ups and all of the type of acrobatic shit, on the bar with the gloves, with the dipped gloves that they get from Harbor Freight, for like, freaking 3 for $10 or some shit like that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. They don't want to put in the work. But they want to be Vikings and shit, right? They want to be Vikings. It's very strange. It's very, very strange. And it's crazy. Like I had a couple of days. I went to the gym, and I don't know what made me do it, but I pulled up like some Viking. If you put in like Viking beats or like Viking music, you know what I mean? And they all start off the same way. Every fucking Viking song on YouTube starts off just like this. And then the beats, and then the drums come in and shit. You know what I mean? And they'll have like that fucking the horn in the background. Like the battle horn and shit. Yo, I'm not gonna lie. Shit hypes you up. You'll be in the gym throwing weights around and shit like that. But listening to it, I was saying to myself, and I said this before, I'm like, what is the difference? What is the difference between listening to Chef G, Love Me Now, and listening to some Viking war music? There's literally no difference. It's the same. It invokes the same feelings. It invokes the same sentiments. It reminds me of Fury Road, with the guy with the guitar, you know what I mean? They got the speakers. He was like the war music that they had. You know what I mean? Like that whole movie, it had a very strong Viking essence to it. You know what I mean? Like, freaking spray your mouth shiny and chrome. Witness me, blood bag, witness, right? Which the irony of it is, there's a direct parallel between saying witness me and some Muslim, with TNT on his chest screaming, Allahu Akbar, right? It's the same shit. Going to the gates of Valhalla and a Muslim screaming, freaking Allahu Akbar is the same shit, right? But again, you talk to the white supremacist Viking dudes, they don't like Muslims. But I'm like, you say Valhalla, he says Allah. Both of you are suicidal as fuck. What's the difference? What is the fucking difference? You know what I mean? Like, it's so funny watching, a lot, like watching the white supremacists. They like to subscribe to the Viking shit. They get mad at like other groups. Like they get mad at the Muslims. And I'm like, you're on the same shit. And even like, if you look at the Viking stuff, right? You look at the Viking music when they have these concerts and they got like the black line of paint across their eyes and they'll be wearing like antler horns and shit like that, right? And they do these like real, like, I don't even know that, like, what do you call that damn Australian instrument? You know what I mean? Like they'll be up on stage and like instruments that weren't even Viking instruments. They're up there with the what do you call that damn thing? The dungity dee or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't even know what it's called. But anyway, they're up there with the dungity dee, the dungity doo, whatever the fuck it's called. They're up there with that shit. And I'm like, this is Australian from Aboriginal. You know what they look like? You know what I mean? They're up there. I'm like, oh, this is so weird. And it just looks like they just come up with like just made up shit. And the funny thing is, when you look at the difference or the similarities between African spiritualism, right? African traditional religions and the shit that they do, burning incense and ooh, give me the monkey bones and I'm gonna grind this down and all the weird like voodoo-esque shit that they do. And then you look at the Viking shit and the shit that they do in order to get in tune with nature. I'm like, the fuck is the difference? What is the difference? They got a shaman and you got a shaman. What is the difference? What is the difference? You know what I mean? I go to Africa. I want to talk to the witch, not the witch doctor, because I know that's a misnomer. Because either you're a witch or you're a healer. I was watching some documentary of some African woman correcting people on that because that's a European term. But you go to the sorcerer, the shaman. And yeah, I would expect to walk into a hut and I gotta move the beads out the way and shit, and there's some old black person there, male or female, with old wrinkly skin and shit like that. You know what I mean? And they got all this shit hanging from the ceiling and shit, all these dead animals hanging from. That's what I picture. And guess what? When I picture, if I had to go and meet some Viking shaman, I picture the same fucking shit. The same fucking shit. The only difference is the person is white. Literally. And it's just funny just looking at it for what it is. But, it's like you get the people that'll never see the parallels between the shit. They'll just, your shit is primitive. I'm like, you're trying to go back to some primitive shit. Who are you to judge? Who are you to judge? You know what I'm saying? Like, African Americans, how dare you try to get in touch with your African roots? What the fuck are you doing? Right? So it's like the pot calling the kettle black. You know what I mean? Like it's hilarious watching them do this shit. But like I said, I think a lot of it is tied to, the whole aspect of modernity. What the hell is that? I think it's tied to modernity, and their yearning for the freedom to basically be as masculine as they want and not be within the confines of, the matrix that is the system of white supremacy. Because right now it's not working for them. So they're looking for, alternatives. But the irony to me is it's like they end up going in the very direction that black men ended up going in. Like sure, where they're going is like they're moving into the white Viking direction, but that's just like what they identify with. But what I'm saying is they're moving in the same quote unquote hyper masculine direction that black men moved in once, black men were, so marginalized and discriminated against economically that they could no longer provide for their families. And so there's a common theme in terms of what you're going to see men do and how they're going to respond to economic deprivation. Because they're not just going to be like, oh, well, I'm a loser and that's all that there is to it. No, they're going to find alternative ways and alternative, identities and shit like that. And right now, what the young white men are doing is they're gravitating towards, white nationalist extremism and shit like that. That's what they're moving towards. Right. Because black men, we don't have, as African American men, we don't have our own country. We only have our own, neighborhoods that, white people aren't, that obviously aren't living in. But that's about it. We don't have like a whole nation, we can call our own and whatnot. So I think there's the difference there, but I do think that a lot of white men are trying to go back to, this fantasy about a pure white Europe, which will suddenly make things better, and an elimination of wokeness. It's the same shit that Jeremy Carl is on, and Jeremy Carl, again, the mindset is, if you are going to be here, then you need to worship us and you need to want to be like us. But the problem is white people, they have already played their card where all the minorities pretty much know, that, you're never going to be accepted, when you're, in these, predominantly European countries. It's not a meritocracy. It doesn't function like that. The Asians are finding this shit out now with the whole being used to eliminate affirmative action, and then they still can't get into the schools, and they're still bitching and crying and shit like that. And there are some Asians that are calling out the Asians that were used, like, you stupid ass. Black people tried to tell you what time it was, and you went off there, trying to be the, white people's, pet. But again, going back to Ghost of White People Past, again, white people are the ones that labeled Asians as the model minority. And if you go and you read the article, Ghost of White People Past, clearly you can see once the Asians become the predominant, population in that environment, Asians or Indians or whatever, white people, they roll the fuck out. They do not want to be in any place or any space where they do not get to define and set the standard and the tone and the pace, of what, what is the cultural ethos of that environment. If they can't define that, they roll the fuck out. That's white folks. They're like, nope, we can't tolerate not being in control. We can't tolerate, having, unconditional, unbridled, unadulterated say, and that's how they want it. But I think, even without the minority arguments that they try to come up with, no, the white men are frustrated that they don't have any sort of, like, they live in a world where, whether it's the woke stuff or whether it's the having to maintain the social identity of stability when they don't have the means to do that. And I imagine that that's an extremely frustrating place to be. I mean, black men have already essentially experienced that. But I imagine it's even more frustrating when you are the dominant member of society and you can't live up to that expectation. And so, they start, losing it and, going down the route of hypermasculinity that they've been going down, trying to grab on Vikings. I mean, if you've been paying attention, it's been a very unique turn, over, I'd say, the last, like, 10 to 8 years or something like that, like, in terms of just, like, the Viking symbolism, the Viking symbology, this going back to, like I said, they literally think that Europe is, the past Europe was like Rivendell in Lord of the Rings. It's like that, even with the whole Viking thing, like, they take it as, us versus them type of thing. But even if you watch the show Vikings, like, I was just watching Vikings and I was watching the death of freaking Ragnar and the king when he fucking took the knife and carved it into his forehead. And I was like, God damn, that shit is vicious. You know what I mean? And then threw his body in a snake pit, and he gave this speech about how, his sons were going to avenge his death and shit, and it's like, I'm like, this whole thing is white on white violence. The whole thing is white on white violence, so it's like the ultimate concept within white supremacy is to reach that pinnacle of white male hyper masculinity, and that violence is projected outwardly out of the white community and onto others. And that is the pinnacle of white male greatness. And this is why I say that white men are a threat and black people need to carry their power tools with them at all time. Because again, as the economy takes a nosedive and inflation, and white men realize that identity of being the provider white male is no longer there, they're going to start snapping. I don't know how many more mass shootings, we have to see, especially those specifically targeting African Americans, before some of you all wake up. And again, as I've said before, when it comes to the cowardice of many of these individuals, where do they go and shoot the place up? At the supermarket with old people, at the church with old people, right? Some place with women and children. They don't pull up on the block. They ain't driving down the street in Chicago looking for niggas, because niggas will shoot back. And that's the whole gap and the whole imbalance, with, the where black men are being in a system where they're discriminated against and marginalized, and white men that basically have to fabricate white male persecution complex, right, in order to try to derive some sense of anger that they can then channel into their concepts and versions of hypermasculinity. It's like fucking white guys running around, the great replacement, and we're being persecuted. I'm like, while you're in the burbs, while black people disproportionately live in poverty and white people disproportionately live these, middle class to upper middle class lifestyles, right? When we look at how many white people are billionaires or millionaires or own companies, right? I mean, you just go through it. Any nice neighborhood with homes that are over $500,000. Like, I look at these, I got McAllen, Texas comes up in my Instagram feed all the time. McAllen, Texas, and they show these like $2.3 million homes, like with the little lake in the backyard or some shit like that. Like, all the houses, like, they got this little lake area. Florida's set up like that a lot of times. And I'm like, who do you think lives in those houses? It ain't black people. You know what I mean? Like, y'all sound ridiculous running around talking about this white persecution. We're being persecuted. You know what I mean? As you double click and start your freaking, your Dodge Challenger, 392 Hemi. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know all white men are not living like that. I'm just saying there's way more white people living like that than black people living like that. So how the fuck are y'all persecuted? It's just nonsense. It's nonsense. And then again, black people out here fighting to just get a little sliver of the American dream, a little sliver of the American pie. White people blow a gasket. Y'all niggas can't have that. I'm like, God damn. You know what I mean? Just losing it. So I see it. I see it when I see the Viking stuff, the white nationalist stuff. White supremacy is a major problem. And it's not, it's like, and the thing is, it's like, there's like two layers to white supremacy from my perspective. There's like the white supremacy that is actually like the real white supremacy, like the corporations and the fucking, like when you're trying to be a black man and you're trying to like get in the door so that you can feed your family and shit like that. Like, that's like the real white supremacy, right? The shit that has to do with access to capital, right? But then you got like the lower level white supremacy, which is like just a bunch of poor whites trying to, that want to feel, superior, that identify with the white corporate elites that keep them just as equally poor. And they want to identify with them. They want to identify with the people making $20 million and shit like that, and have, stock in fucking Raytheon and Halliburton and shit like that. I'm like, you're not in the same space as they are, but doesn't matter. They're white. And, it could work. One day, one of them will recognize, who I am and my awesomeness, and they're going to reach down, and I'm going to reach up, and they're going to pull me up, and I'll leave all you niggas behind. That's their, view. And I'm like, Ezekiel, they're not going to pull you up. Shut up, nigger. Silence. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God. It just, that's how they think. That's how they function. And then they get into, it's just weird. And again, where the elites, like, they use that to keep the focus on the low level fucking race shit between, like, white guys, be careful because those black guys will steal your girl, and then despite the fact that it's a system of white supremacy, they'll promote a handful of black men in a particular way that make those men look like way more sexually threatening. Like I said, right? Like, it's like, think about it, right? It's like white men will get mad because they see a black man, a black athlete with a white woman on his arm. There's plenty of black athletes with black women on their arm, right? And white supremacists will be like, well, you stick to your women and we'll stick to ours. Well, your fucking paparazzi won't show the fucking black man with his black wife. He's running around chasing Reggie Bush all over the fucking place, or chasing Kanye all over the place. Hey, I'm a black athlete over here with my black queen. Oh, we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that, right? And then that creates what? The poor white guys, they get mad. Black guys stealing all our precious white women, right? The black woman, she's pissed off, right? Because she's like, colorism, right? So she bitching, right? So everybody's all upset, but you're not recognizing it for what it is, like again, right? And it's like, this is where white men are fucked up, because it's like they want black people to keep to themselves, right? In particular, the black men, but yet they're against black men having pride about being black, because every time black men try to establish pride about being black, white men come in there and start bitching and start trying to topple the shit. And it's like, if the black people were focused on themselves and had pride in themselves, then you wouldn't see whatever little bit of interracial, the snow bunny hopping, as Umar Johnson calls it. You wouldn't see any of that. Right? But then again, the white elites, they like to facilitate that because it creates what? More division. Right? It creates more young white men feeling triggered that they're losing the precious, the white women. Because again, they still got that jealousy. They still got that animosity about the black man's physique and all that stuff. Right? But it goes to the same thing that I said about, why white supremacy will sit there and criticize black people about the black community being, black people being on welfare or criminality or everything else like that. I'm like, yo, we could have an intact black community, and the black community is intact, and we got black suburbs, and we live on our side of town, and we got our own supermarkets, our own banks, our own this, our own that, and y'all on your side of town, and we not interacting with each other. Right? It could be that, but at the end of the day, right, white people don't want that, because they see that as a threat. They see that as competing against them, in the marketplace. It's like, well, what, Mr. White Supremacist, what do you want then? What do you want? We want total domination. It's like, oh my God, like, you can't even, like, I know that there's white supremacists out there that low key are like, we would much rather have that and you go to your corner and we go to ours, than for it to be, for us to have all these clashes and shit like that. But I'm like, but you won't leave us the fuck alone. You won't leave us alone. People talk about, go back to Africa. Oh, go back to Africa. And does that mean that Europeans are going to leave black people alone and not fuck with black people and try to extract the resources that they need to fuel their European economies and fuel their North American economy? No, they're not going to do that. Again, going back to invade the world, invite the world. So like white people are like women. They want to have it. They want to have it every way. They want all of the benefits, none of the cons. Yes, we want you all to not be around us, and we want we want to get your resources for nothing, and we want to keep your space and your environment underdeveloped. You know what I mean? And we're just over here in Rivendell in Europe, like it's the fucking Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Where the elves live and shit, and it's just so peaceful and shit like that. And white women are in the fields and they're calling the cows as I, come out of my Viking tent and shit like that. And she's just over there, right? And she's calling the cows, and the cows come over, and then we, dance around the fucking Viking fire. Like, it's like, oh my God, man. Like, the fantasy that these motherfuckers live in is crazy. Like, it's crazy. But that's what they want, But What's irritating, what irritates me about white people is, or the white supremacists, nationalists, whatever you want to call them, is the double talk. It's the double talk. It's the I want to have it all. It's the complaining about outcome A or outcome B, and then ignoring the fact that outcome B exists because step A was taken or step A was done. It's very cringy, the lack, the way that they twist and warp reality to justify the things that they did, and then when there's a negative outcome or a byproduct that negatively affects them, they're getting to bitching, and then they get into all this victim blaming. I'm like, what are you bitching about? You did it. You know what I mean? The Native Americans are taking U.S. tax dollars and they're on the reservations and they're all just lazy and they don't do anything and they're all alcoholics. I'm like, who gave them the alcohol? I had a white guy that I had to respond to in the comment section. It was some video talking about the way, I think the video was called, what was it? It was Black Men Tried to Warn Us. And he was talking about the welfare state and all that shit and everything that black men went through, which, again, like I said, white men are going through the shit right now. And he was bitching about, no, I'm not even bitching. He was telling the story, even though the channel looks like it's run by a white person, but the voice, he sounds like he's like a black suburbanite, to be honest with you. Reminds me of Pink Elephant. But in any event, I remember I left a comment because a white guy was like, well, nobody told the black people to do drugs, talking about the CIA, Iran Contras. And I left a comment over there and I was like, yeah, nobody told white women to do OnlyFans. You know what I mean? Because basically I was drawing a parallel between, black people either A, doing drugs, or black women accepting, welfare. And I'm like, okay, well, white women are over there on OnlyFans. All you want to do is address them on the whatever at show. That's all you want to do. Oh, there's whores, and then when they want to talk about Jesus and Christianity, the white community is very confused right now. There's a lot of different ideologies, floating around, right? I see why white men gravitate towards, Trump and the Republicans. Like I said before, even black men, are more, conservative like that. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you want the patriarchy to come back. If men are not gainfully employed and men are not making, substantially more than women, enough for, women to justify in their head being, dependent on a man. You know what I mean? And I don't even know if that genie is going back in the bottle. There's no reason, there's no incentive for them to get with the program. And I mean, what they've done in society recently, I don't even know where this shit is going. Because men are not going to be productive without being in control. Men are not going to fight, build, maintain, and defend to not be the breadwinners. That's just not going to happen. It's just not. You know what I mean? They will play Xbox until the wheels fall off. They will go and do something else. They will be a beachcomber. They will leave the country. You know what I mean? They will just completely shut down. There's enough videos online right now talking about men walking away, from society. So there's multiple things going on, but I definitely see white men trying to reclaim their masculinity, and it's and I guess I don't know, when did white men lose their masculinity? That's a good question. When did they lose their masculinity? Was it in the 1950s? When did white men lose their masculinity? I know how everybody likes to blame it's the Zillennials. They lost it. Well, they did grow up in, post # Me Too world, type of, they did grow up in that, and all the, sexual harassment and, my pronouns and all. They did grow up in that. But I'm like, but that still doesn't cut it. Because men would still be able to be masculine if they were gainfully employed. If they could, again, lay the foundation down and then add a woman to, their program, add a woman to whatever it is that they're doing as men. I'm like, that's where your problem is. Your problem probably started with deindustrialization back in the 1970s and the elimination of unions through Reagan, right? Your favorite Republican got rid of the unions, got rid of you being gainfully employed and telling you about trickle down economics. That's where it really started, because people can talk all the shit that they want as long as a man is gainfully employed. At that point, they're just talking. They're just talking. Yeah, whatever, bitch. And you can't stop a man with money. But see, when that shit flips and the men are no longer gainfully employed, it's not just talking anymore. It's not just talking. Now your authority, your control is seriously being challenged. Not just by your women, but obviously by other groups. And this is where white men like Jeremy Carl feel seriously threatened. They feel seriously threatened because that sense of, white men collectively having power, even though the white proletariat has never had that power, but they felt empowered, at least at the local level, right? It's like, when you get into, some of these bumblefuck towns in the deep rural South and the sundown towns and everything else like that, where people are like literally one or two cousins away from actually being related to one another. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's Ned's wife's sister's my first cousin. That type of shit. You know what I mean? Where the mayor and the police chief are relatives, like, or intermarried or whatever. Yeah, in those environments, oh yeah, white people got all the fucking power. They got all the power. And you gotta have, the freaking, FBI come in, with some, third party investigation. That's why they want to get rid of that shit with the 2025, so that way there is no FBI to investigate local crimes and shit like that. That way they can do whatever the fuck they want to do and get away with it. That's the part for black people that's very dangerous. Which is why I advocate for power tools. And not only that, when it comes to black people in the Democratic Party, black people, as I've said numerous times, should be the one telling the Democrats that gun control is not on the table. Fuck out of here. Oh, well, what about the white supremacists shooting? Let them shoot up the fucking place. We're going to be shooting back. I don't give a fuck. But what is not going to happen is you going to have me out there like the state of New York, out there with nothing but my ass. Fuck that. Because as time goes on, just looking at it, white people's birth rates, all that, they're going to get crazier. They're going to get crazier as time goes on. They're going to get more in their feelings. Their birth rates are shit, because again, they've built their whole civilization on, we're not like those other people. We're responsible, and not realizing the only thing that allows them to be responsible is being gainfully employed. As soon as you take that away, then they're locked in a box where they can't move. They can't do anything that they want to do. So they can't, the responsible thing is to not start a family if you don't have enough income. So that's what they're doing. Meanwhile, you got the people like blacks and Hispanics in particular that are used to poverty, and not that I agree with it, but they have kids all willy-nilly. And so that creates that whole, oh shit, we're going to be outnumbered by 2030 or whatever, right? Oh shit, how do we prevent this? Oh, let's prevent people from being able to vote. And, you got to have, we got to create barriers to prevent, for preventing people from voting, or what's the other thing that they'll do? The gerrymandering, shit like that. Now, even I think, I'm like, that whole thing that you can't go and get a license or ID, I think that's bullshit. I think everybody should have an ID when it comes to voting. You know what I mean? But so I agree with the concept, but I disagree with conservatives' motivations for why they want to do it. Because there's a lot of, racism in the motivations of why they want to do it. It's not like they're like, we're going to set up a system to ensure that everybody has a proper ID or something like that. Like they want to leave it up to you. It's kind of like the 401k thing, which is only, taxes deferred. It's not, it takes away the burden of the corporations in order to match, your pension and all that other shit. So, damn, what was I saying? I was saying something about I just went blank. But anyway, yeah, so I just look at the whole thing like, I think that as white people feel like they're losing power, their identity, because the wealthy white elites are not sharing, they're not feeling the lifestyle that they think that they're entitled to, or that defines them. I think that they're going to get more and more rowdy. And that's just my opinion on it. And I think black people should take the necessary precautions, because of that. Because all it takes is just one white dude getting in his feels. You know what I mean? You don't know what he's been watching. You don't know what he's sitting on the internet seething and shit. You know what I mean? You ever have a white person just try to pick a fight with you? You know what I mean? And black people are the wrong ones to pick a fight with, because black people are already pissed off. White people be walking around, I hope nothing happens. I hope this doesn't happen. That's what a lot of that Karen shit is. The Karen shit, whether male Karen or female Karen, that's white people lashing out and shit like that. But black people are the wrong ones to fuck with, because a lot of black people, again, what do we say? We don't say, I hope nothing happens today. No, a lot of us are on some, I wish a motherfucker would. Black people they're looking for a reason to crash out. We just haven't crashed out. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that, I forget who it was. I don't know if it was Captain Solo's uncle, or somebody. There was like a white dude that was saying, basically he was like looking at black people, and he was like, I don't know why they don't just kill us all. This is what the white guy was saying, because he recognized the mistreatment, of black people. And I think that's one of the things that is white folks, greatest fear, because they know what they did. That's why they try to victim blame all the time, because, they carry that white man's burden. Any other minority, they don't have to particularly, they don't feel that they owe them anything. But there is a guilt that white people carry, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. Bill Burr has talked about this. He's acknowledged it and everything. And a lot of people try to dismiss him because his wife is black. So he's gone through the ringer, just even, speaking on the subject, but yeah, I mean, I wish there could be an honest conversation, about this. I mean, I'm giving it to you the best way I can give it to you, but a lot of white men, they're not going to have an honest conversation when it comes to that shit. I mean, they're just going to go into denial mode. The white fragility is real. The lack of honesty is it is what it is. But I think that at the very least, my videos do help with some white men. And they get into denial mode in my comment section and shit like that. But I'm like, motherfucker, you commenting, you listening underneath every one of my videos. You know what I mean? You giving your little 2 cents. You're listening. You may not agree with everything that I'm saying, but there's something that you're getting out of it. And again, I don't block people's comments and shit. Like, I got straight up self-proclaimed white nationalist in my comment section. I let them say what they want to say, because I don't believe in blocking people and all that shit. And then what are they going to do? Go in their echo chambers and then deny white supremacy? Nah, motherfucker. Get that shit off your chest. Get that shit off your chest in the SWP comment section. Get that shit off your chest. Tell us how you really feel. Tell us why you mad, son. Tell us why you mad. And that's how a lot of these conversations really should be. Right? But, the mainstream, they want things to be their particular narrative. So you can't get any of the two factions to really, chop it up when it comes to this stuff. But I don't think white supremacy is anything to be played with. I think that a lot of white people are pathological. It's like the racism that they had, like they can't help it. It's like they cannot help it. It's how they view things. I challenge it in my own way in terms of bringing shit up, the contradictions. I'm like, how the fuck you going, how you gonna sit there, you all can't claim Egypt. You're from West Africa. And how the fuck are y'all, where are you from? My people are from England. Or my favorite, my people are from Germany. And you're claiming Greece and Rome? Fuck, the Romans were the ones that were trying to fuck your ass up and oppress you, in Germany, in the Teutoburg forest, right? And y'all clapped back, and then they came back and freaking purged and whatnot, right? I'm like, come on, let's keep it a buck. The Romans didn't even fuck with the Germania, but yet you're gonna run around here. I mean, it's crazy. The little funny man with the funny mustache went and then tried to claim, the Roman, based his whole Third Reich after Rome, and I'm like, but the Romans were the ones that were trying to conquer you. That would be like African Americans, literally claiming we was Vikings and shit, or like, no, not Vikings, because Vikings weren't trying to conquer black people. Let me try to think. Well, that would be like in 100 years from now, black people's like wearing like Ku Klux Klan outfits, and that's like their gangster clothes. I'm like, yo, the Klan didn't fuck with you. Why are you wearing robes and sheets like that? You motherfuckers up there throwing up gang signs, you know what I mean? Talking about, this is the new black gang shit, this is the black mafia or something like. It's like, what? You're just over there being confused and shit. And that's literally what it looks like with the Germans, modeling their whole empire after the Romans or the Greeks, whichever one they modeled it after. But you got people from freaking England, people from Ireland that are in the comment section and racist, and people from Scandinavia, and they're like, black people never built anything. You all are sub-Saharan Africans. White people, we look at the magnificence of the Colosseum. I'm like, and you're in Oslo. You're in Oslo and you want to tell me about the magnificence of the Colosseum, but black people, even though we've seen the depictions of the black African ancient Egyptians, right? Especially in the earliest periods, black people can't claim Egypt. I'm like, okay. Like, you can't make this shit up. But anyway, I know this video is long. I'm done. I'm finished. That's my video, SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.